Hey everyone, it's Justin and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm so excited because I have some new release products by Tim Holtz and Sizzix to share with you. A huge thank you to scrapbook.com for sending me these products to play with in advance. I wanted to give you a little bit of a closer look at the products that were sent to me. So we have the Vault Industrial set, the Vault Atomic Retro set, and lastly, the Vault Floristry set. And these three sets are awesome, but for today's card, I'm going to be using the Atomic set for our project. To start off, I am going to be taking some mixed media paper in the 6x8 paper pad size, and with the white, I am going to take one of the panels, and then we are going to do a little bit of die cutting with this panel. I am going to pull in the Wavy with Dots A2 cover plate die by scrapbook.com to help me with the background of my card. I'm going to use some mint tape to tack down the die to my mixed media paper, and here's what everything looks like all die cut. I'm also going to be pulling in a paper inking palette by Picket Fence Studios to aid with my ink blending. For our topmost die cut, I'm going to be using Kitsch Flamingo and Candied Apple Distress Oxide ink to blend a nice pink to red ombre. So we're going to start by placing our Kitsch Flamingo ink down onto our paper first, and then I'm going to use my blending tool. This is a new foam blending tool with the Candied Apple Distress Oxide ink to add to the bottom, and use the Kitsch Flamingo blending tool to blend the two colors together. Once I'm happy with my blend, I'm going to take my section off, clean my paper inking palette, and move on to my next section, which is going to use dried marigold distress oxide ink and also carved pumpkin distress oxide ink. These two oranges blend really nicely into each other, so we're going to put down our carved pumpkin and then pull back in our dried marigold tool to get a nice blend. After cleaning off my paper inking palette once again, I put my third die cut down, and I'm going to use squeezed lemonade and mustard seed distress oxide ink to blend up my third die cut. We're going to put the squeezed lemonade on top, mustard seed on the bottom to get that nice variance of color, and then to make sure that the two colors blend nicely once together, I am going to pull back in the squeezed lemonade foam blending tool to get a nice blend. For our fourth section, using a clean paper inking palette, I am going to blend Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink on the top, and once I'm happy with that layer of ink, we are going to then switch it up and we are going to put some Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink as our bottommost color. So I'm going to get that nicely into place, and then we will of course be pulling the Twisted Citron blending tool back into this panel to help blend the two colors together very nicely. For our final section, we're going to be using Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink along with Peacock Feathers for the small bottom portion to blend them together and get a nice little blend using some aqua blues. Sometimes I like to use more of a blue-green than just standard blues because I just like the way that it looks on my projects. So after I'm done with my final section, I have that set off to the side, and you can see how all five of the colors look blended up. I'm going to put a little bit of water. I took the nozzle off of my distress sprayer and I'm splattering some water onto my panels. Once I'm happy with the amount of water that's on them, I am going to use a clean craft towel to go ahead and pick up the water to get some really nice bleach spots. Now for a little extra shimmer, we're going to use some Distress Spritz on each of the die cuts, and I'm starting with Kitsch Flamingo Distress Spritz onto our red and pink blended die cut. Once I spray it, I make sure to use tweezers to carefully set it to the side to dry. I'm going to use Spiced Marmalade Distress Spritz for the orange panel to get a nice orange shimmer on there, and then I will set that portion off to dry. For our yellow die cut, we are going to use Squeezed Lemonade Distress Spritz, and so I'm just going to spray a little bit off to the side to make sure my sprayer is good to work, and then spritz my panel afterwards, putting it off to dry. Then we'll move on to some Twisted Citron Distress Spritz, so I'll go ahead, put some off to the side, and spray my panel for some nice shimmer. And then after that is set to the side, we are going to use Salvage Patina Distress Spritz onto our last blue section. This one, it comes out a little bit more splotchy than I had intended, but at the end of the day, I'm still super happy with how everything had turned out. Now to assemble my die cut pieces, I take an A2 size panel of mixed media cardstock in white, and I'm going to use liquid adhesive to put each of the die cuts into place. I'm remembering the order that I blended them in and making sure that the lighter portion of each die cut is on top, so I'm using my Misty Precision Glue Press to apply a liquid adhesive to each of those die cuts so that I have a little bit of give time before they're fully set into place when I put them onto the paper. So I'm very gently trying to nudge each of them very nicely into place so that they're nice firmly against each other, that there's not any gaps going on. And I'm really starting to love how this rainbow of colors is coming together. Once I get my squeezed lemonade portion into place, we can work on twisted citron, nudging it ever so slightly so that it goes right up against the yellow die cut. And then once we have the twisted citron panel nicely into place, we can put our final die cut into place, which uses the salvage patina and the peacock feathers color. Using my scrap mixed media paper, I pull in my Vault Atomic Retro die set, and I decide that I want to use all of the little retro embellishment images to just die cut from solid white paper. I'm going to use some mint tape to go ahead and tack all of my dies down onto my panel, and then I will process it off camera with my die cutting machine to get all of the shapes for the background of my card. Now here is a closer look at all of the die cut shapes that I prepared using the Vault Atomic Retro set, cutting out from the white cardstock. I'm taking my guillotine trimmer and I'm going to trim down my wavy with dots background to about a 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 panel. The reason I'm doing this is that I'm going to adhere this to an A2 size panel that's going to act as a very nice framing piece for this, and it's also going to pull in other colors that I'm going to be using for the rest of this card. Now, off camera, I did arrange all of my die cuts onto my background, and once I was satisfied with the placement of them, I'm using my Misty Precision Glue Press to adhere each of the elements to the background. As you'll notice, this section is sped up a little bit just to save you a little bit of time, and then you're also going to notice as I'm adhering my elements to my background, some of them are going off the side of the card. I think that's a really important thing to do when you are creating a background is to not restrict all of your elements within the panel you're working on. So what I mean by that more simply is allow your die cuts to go off the panel because that makes your scene look like it's a little bit more extended and it gives it a more realistic vibe. So I am adhering all of my little die cut pieces exactly where I need them to go, keeping in mind that I want to kind of have a sentiment in the center of the card so I'm not overly concerned with filling that center section chock full of these little fun elements. So once I have all of my pieces nice and adhered, I am then going to want to trim off the excess as well. And now here you'll see I'm getting my last little portion into place, and this is also a great place if I had a little extra piece to pop it in there. But I'm going to use my scissors to trim off the excess, and this gives a nice clean cut to the edge of my project, so it kind of stops those die cuts from going all the way off the panel, but still gives the illusion that they're extended beyond what you can already see. For my next portion, I'm going to pull in some black mixed media paper and I'm going to take a 6x8 panel and trim it down to an A2 size, and this is going to act as a frame for my card. Now, these pads do come in A2 size as well, which would bypass any sort of additional cutting, but I'm also going to be pulling in some more mixed media paper in black later on in this project. So I'm going to adhere my panel nicely to an A2 size background of the black mixed media paper, and I get a really nice clean black frame around that background. We're going to also use the thank you 3 word dies to spell out our sentiments, and I'm just going to use hello and you. I think hello you is such a cool little sentiment to use. It's a little bit extended beyond just the word hello, and it kind of gives a really sort of comfort and informal vibe to your card. So I'm using some mixed media white paper to go ahead and die cut out the words themselves, and we're going to be using the mixed media paper in black for the shadow elements. Once I have my letters and my shadow outlines all cut out, I'm going to use a combination of craft tweezers along with liquid adhesive to put my sentiments nicely into place. So I've got my hello all taken care of, and then after I'm happy with how the hello die cut turns out, we're going to move on to spelling out you. Now the Y in you is separated from the O and the U, so you're going to want to make sure that you keep track of all your die cuts as they are going to be 2 separate pieces. Now, once you're happy with how each of the die cut words look, now I want to go ahead and put a little bit of foam adhesive onto the back of each of the words to add a little bit of extra dimension to my project. I am a huge fan of the foam strips by scrapbook.com that they offer in a 1/4 of an inch sizing. They are just so nice and narrow. I don't have to worry about any sort of additional trimming, and they will fit on almost any type of image. So I put my hello and my U adhered nicely to my card background, kind of putting them on an angle and slightly offset. And once I have that already, I can then move on to adhering my whole panel to an A2 sized card base. I like to put my panel onto a card base before I put any sort of embellishments on there because I find that embellishments can be really easy to disturb if you're still handling the panel with your project. So embellishments are always sort of the last thing that I like to work with. So speaking of embellishments, now that my card is nicely secured onto my card base, I am going to pull in a 4-ounce bottle of satin pearl pops of color to use for embellishment for our card. I am just going to sort of randomly place some different sized pops of color dots. And one thing that you're going to want to keep in mind when using pops of color, they are going to come out of the bottle with a little bit of a conical shape and they're not going to be flat, but it's really easy to make your pops of color flat and almost work like your own custom enamel dots. So once I have everything nicely into place, I'm going to pick up my background and I'm going to tap the back of it just using my fingernails, and it's going to help flatten out those pops of color so that they don't have that conical point to them. I do decide to go in and add a couple more pops of color dots just because I want to make sure that all of my space is filled out really nicely. And then after I get those final pops ready, I'm going to tap the back and I'm going to be entirely finished with my card. So thank you all so very much for stopping by for some new Tim Holtz and Sizzix inspiration today. I hope that this card provides you with some fun and retro inspiration using the new Vault Atomic Retro set, along with the other fun projects that you can make with the new products that came out from today as well. I have created 3 cards using these new products. Here you can see a little bit of a snapshot of all 3 of the different cards that I created, and all 3 of them give you some really fun and funky vibes. Now, if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on all socials at Just a Note by Justin for further crafting inspiration. I also have shopping links below ready for you for any shopping for any products that I may have inspired you to create with. Thank you once again for stopping by my channel and have a great day. Goodbye.